Hey, my name's Zay, and I'm a poet in a dead society. And this is my clothing brand. It's called Leo's World. But before I tell you about this brand, I actually want to tell you why I've even started it. I've had this idea since I was 16, and in all honesty, I do it for the love of art and fashion while also imbuing meaning into your life. Now, the current brand path has evolved over time as I've been evolving over time. This brand would be much more of a luxury brand that sprinkles in streetwear elements. Well, it's actually because, since I was 16, I've always been into streetwear fashion. And in all honesty, I've kind of gotten bored with it, in all honesty. And I wanted to be able to, I ended up seeking out much more of the finer things in fashion and the much more interesting parts of it that I find interesting to me. Good question. Well, I actually want this brand to evolve much more into making more artisanal garments that I can actually see people wearing on the street. Or it's something cool and simple that like people just when you go out the house. What I want is I want people to look at you and say, "What is this brand? Where did this come from?" And I know that sounds like a field day for those who gatekeep. By the way, you should really check out my old video. I already talked about fashion gatekeepers. Well, there's two type of people that will shop for this brand. You have the people who will shop for this brand and like the message or at least is intrigued by the message and like the pieces as well. The other hand is the people that may not agree with the message or don't support the message, but they still like the pieces themselves and they think it'll look cool on them. Which both are totally valid to me in all honesty. Both have their own reason as to why they want to buy the brand. And I support that. You don't have to agree with the message in order to shop for this brand. Well, it's kind of all over the place in all honesty. I can get an idea randomly in my head. Sometimes I kind of get an idea from just observing life in itself. Sometimes it could be me watching a movie from a YouTube video that explains the meaning of the movie and it inspires me. Definitely Japan and grunge culture and music. I love those. Can't forget hip hop as well. But I think the main inspirations that I get are really from older designer bodies of work and the Bible. So this collection is called Into the Shadows. It will explore a lot of dark topics such as death, meaning in life, sadness and sorrow, is there a God, some dystopian philosophy and literature, apocalyptic themes, as well as my own journey in life. And one thing I want to heavily emphasize is that this is what I call dark expressionism. It paints a dark reality as it is. That means no sugarcoating, no matter whether I kick the bee's nest or not. Dark expressionism must tell the truth and as well tell about a person's life. Yeah, I think it's time to start addressing the elephants in the room. I think a lot of people are very depressed and very nihilistic in their mind and how they see life. So what I want to do within this collection is to bring hope in their eyes, look towards life, celebrate it, explore the idea of there being possibly a God or meaning to life in and of itself. The people who should be stepping up and saying something are all hiding in corners, hoping that someone doesn't find something that they say offensive. It's like everyone is walking on eggshells nowadays. Someone has to be the scapegoat. Guess that's gonna have to be me. One thing I do want to say is that this is not a glorification of death or of evil. It is simply stating and addressing things as they are and giving possible solutions if I can, or to shed hope in life. Some of you may see this as existential and reinforces this nihilistic perspective, but some of you will see this as hope and even take into consideration of there being possibly a God out there. Or if you do, explore the ideas of God even further. Yeah, so I think these conversations are important for a reason. It's because these things affect how we see life, which then affects how we see each other, which then affects how we see a society, which then affects how we see everything else, the whole of life. This collection makes you think and ask questions like, is there a God? Why am I here? What is the purpose of me being and living? Why am I not wanting to not be here anymore? Like these are real things and real concerns that people have in life. And these are things that need to be discussed, even if they already are talked about. They should keep being talked about because these are things are very important to society and life and humanity as a whole. I'm hoping that these conversations or discussions will transform people's lives for the better, hopefully. It also may give us closer answers to what we may be thinking or give us a new perspective on something. These garments will take time to develop, research about the topic and idea, and also as well the meaning of the garment. I create fashion show notes on my channel, of course, when I release the piece. I think you should subscribe to the channel already because I mean, I already make videos about fashion, music, and just things about life in general. So while the piece takes time to develop, you could be watching a video about me talking about things like this if you find this stuff interesting. Yeah, well, the meaning of this piece actually comes from a Bible verse in Jeremiah 17:9 and a quote from Carl Jung of The Shadow Self. The quote from Carl Jung is the shadow self is the negative side of the ego. It is our inner devil. It is the personification of evil. Yeah, so according to Carl Jung, the ego is essentially it is the field of consciousness which contains the understanding or the conscious awareness of you existing and your continuing sense of personal identity. This fits perfectly because this represents one's own dark side, which we all have. The person in which we stare at and it stares back at us with the evil grin. That evil side we all choose to hide. I think a very similar idea of that quote is actually from the biblical verse from Jeremiah that says, "The heart is deceitful above all things and wicked. Who can know it?" And to get a better context of the verse, because this is what the piece centers around, you have to get the understanding of what Jeremiah means. It says from the wisdom of God in chapter 5, verse 1, this is what God says: cursed are those who put their mere trust in humans. Now, this immediately lets you know that the biblical God does not take too kindly about people putting trust in men and putting trust in their own strength. In fact, he actually has a lot of harsh words for those people. Now, in this verse, is actually talking about the people of Judah, but if you've ever read the Bible, once or a couple of times, it can sometimes be applied to your life as well. Now, in this time period, Judah has broken their covenant with God in the land where God gave them by following other gods, which breaks the very first commandment God has told them before they get into the land or when they're in the land. These would be the 10 commandments. Thou shalt have no other God before me. And the biblical God warns them and tells them to turn away from their idols and come back to him. Judah, of course, rejects God's word and rejects Jeremiah for what he said. So in the Bible later on, God sends another warning through Jeremiah to tell them to turn away from their sins, repent, and come back to him. And this time, if they don't do that, there will be consequences. He will send the kingdom of the north to punish them and, destroy their land and, unalive some people. The kingdom of the north will put them in bondage, and the kingdom of the north would be Babylon. Kind of kinky, right, when I say that? Now, at this point, God
Say,
saying
bro.
he about to
Yeah,
stand
this is
on
nigga
business.
stand on business, nigga.
He
One
not
man army
playing.
against 50, nigga.
Could you guess what the people of Judah thought about that? Well, if you thought they wouldn't be hard-headed, then you'd be wrong. You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of when your parents tell you to stop running around the house when you were a child because you're gonna break something in the house, and then moments later you break something in the house, and then now you gotta get the worst whooping of your life because somehow, some way, you broke the most precious item in the house out of all items. That's what it just kind of reminded me of. That's all I gotta say. So not only did they not listen to what God said through Jeremiah, they wanted to knock bro off. And then on top of that, after that, they ended up trying to link up with the ops after that. To just because he had said that they wanted protection from the people from the north to because Jeremiah had said that. I mean, talk about disrespect. Talk about pride and arrogance. Like you're trying to link up with the ops that your God delivered you from? That's some slimy behavior. I'm not gonna hold you. So essentially in verse 5 and 6, he's cursing them for not obeying him and still continuing to whore after these gods. Verse 6 kind of just continues essentially what they will be like, the conditions of where they'll be living in or how they'll be living in. Now, I want you to look at verse 7 and 8. These are very interesting actually, because you have the contrast side of this actually, as to where God praises these people who do put their trust in him. I don't think I kind of need to get I don't think I kind of need to try and get an understanding from this because it kind of seems very self-explanatory to me. So throughout the entirety of Jeremiah, you have God's people who chose to do what they want to do, followed their heart's desires, worshipped other gods, being disobedient to their God, and well, being very prideful against them the entire time. I'm not even gonna lie to you. When I seen what happened at the end, like when I like read it, I'm not really. In all honesty, it doesn't seem to be too crazy of a theme when he punished them and actually did carried out what he said he was going to do according to the Bible. But this is what I think prompts what God says in the Bible in verse 9 that says, "The human heart is the most deceitful of them all and desperately wicked. Who can know it?" Who really knows how bad it is? And when you think about the word desperate, you think about the word craving. So essentially, Jeremiah is saying that the heart is desperately craving its own selfish desires and what it wants to do. And this part is what I kind of find fascinating because, well, when you sit down and really think about it, who really can know how dark the heart can be? I mean, just think about the even invention of a serial killer. Actually, the stuff that they say they do and find enjoyment in is actually it's pretty crazy when you think about it. In fact, actually, I was actually watching a investigation video where this guy talks about him, you know, a person and dumped their body in the water and he had no remorse. In fact, he actually laughed that he did that. Like, when you think about that sort of situation as a person who may be a cop and sees this kind of stuff, you can see kind of the level of just danger and like evilness a heart can conjure up if it pursues its ideas. And the thing is with serial killers is that serial killers are not just born. Like, these are things that happen over time. Yet this is something that I see that is very pushed when it comes to the media, is this idea of follow your heart. Now, there's a difference between follow your heart and follow your dreams. But it seems to be, as coming from, the biblical God, that this sort of idea is very dangerous to lean upon and put your trust into, because you We all have all types of desires, right? I mean, think about this. Just because you have a desire or something doesn't mean that you should be able to act upon it. And I think that this idea is more relevant to us as Gen Z, and because a lot of us in Gen Z are reactionary to emotions. Like, it's less rational thinking. It's almost if we have reverted to just concaving to our instincts as like some type of wild animal. Or should I say we're more prone to concaving to our instincts. A lot of people are more, when it comes to Gen Z, a lot of people are more reactionary when it comes down to words rather than, seeing things as reality, or not internalizing or personalizing the words that people say, because it becomes very dangerous when it comes to us, specifically when it comes to mental health, because you can have this person who is mentally unstable when it comes to Gen Z, and when someone says something to them that they may not like or disapprove of, things can go left pretty quick. Even getting robbed sometimes, or even, off with the head. And again, I think that this is very crucial to us as Gen Z, to maybe at least take caution to following our hearts and following what we feel all the time. The last part of this verse is that it says that God sees people's hearts and motives and intentions on what they do. Meaning that, I mean, I think it's kind of self explanatory, but meaning that whatever you do, God can see why you're doing what you're doing, and whether it's a good thing and or if it's a bad thing, according to the biblical God, of course. So, yes, I think the takeaway of this Bible verse is, obviously, I think the message is kind of spread it out throughout Jeremiah. It's to trust in God, turn away from idols, and think before you act upon your desires. And also, do not rely upon your own strength. And I say, think about what your motives is when it comes to your desires. Is it a good thing, or does this thing self or is this thing only serve yourself? Because we as humans, we're built to serve each other. Like, that's kind of what we do. We serve each other as human beings. I see that all the time when it comes to how human interactions come and form. Now, let's talk a little bit about this garment. Actually, this is a black garment that is 100% cotton, and have my name logo on there, and actually have an accent on there. It's actually muslin fabric. Um, and so I think this thing is very beautiful when it comes to the way that it sits and look on the body, because, well, actually, you know what? To even talk about that, in fact, when you actually wash this garment, it actually becomes destroyed, sort of furthering this idea of, not even sort of, it's flirting with this idea that this is now the shadow self being revealed. It is. And when you think about the nature of cotton as well, it actually clings to the body. So this is what I find very poetic about this, because you have this shadow version, or the shirt, which is the Leo's World, the persona t-shirt. You have this persona imbuing itself onto your body and clinging to it, literally becoming one with you. It itself is infusing itself within your body, also explaining itself being the shadow. It is the dark side within you. I think this is very beautiful and poetic when you really think about this garment. I think that the pictures communicate the idea very well actually. Yeah, I think that the pictures on the body convey the persona really well actually. In fact, actually the picture itself has a meaning. Some of you are probably wondering, why is it so dark? And I'm actually going to explain that. The person or the subject or the person represents the shadow self. He represents within the subject represents in the photo the shadow self or the sinful nature that lies within us all. So in the picture, you have this shadow that literally emerges from the shadows and comes to the light. The only thing that is the focus of when it comes to the piece is what people will actually see, which is the logo and the accents. The rest of the garment actually fades into obscurity and it cloaks and becomes one with the shadows, as well as the subject actually in the photo. It becomes one with the shadows. I use chiaroscuro as the inspiration for this piece. Yes, so chiaroscuro is a term that is used within drawings and paintings. Chiaro means light or clear. Oscuro means dark or obscure. And when you look at this photo, it literally embodies that ethos. I mean, are you starting to see how beautifully poetic this is? Even the actual color of the light actually makes sense within the context of this photo. It itself has meaning. The color of the light blue is meant to communicate this idea that something is dead or is the color blue is meant to communicate this idea that something is dead, furthering this idea of the subject being the shadow self or the sinful nature. What's that? Who do you think it is? Is that me? Yeah, I'm you, but better. I'm everything you wish you could be. Why are you so hostile to me? You need me. Need you? What are you talking about? I don't need anyone. You know you'd be nothing without me. I've done so much for you, and you know that. I don't even act like this. What, you trying to call me emotional? You think I'm the problem? It's really you. And you have a lot of issues you need to work on. No, you are me. You are me. Me and you are the same. There is no difference between us. You and I are the same person. I'm just a better version than you. Man, you have one ego. Do I have an ego? Or do you? Step into the shadows. Step into the shadows. Step into the shadows. Oh, of course. So, what I wanted to do was communicate this idea of that you have this good version of yourself and this bad version of yourself. And the space around them represents the consciousness or the mind. So, in fact, actually, I actually have the very dark things about myself, some of the ugly things that I do not desire, some of the things that I don't like. And so I had to literally put myself within my I literally had to think as if I was the persona itself. I had to portray two personas, one of the good side and one of the bad side. You have this good side, which represents this holistic self, the spiritual side. And then you also have this evil side, the dark side, which represents the evil nature, the one's own cravings and self centered desires, sometimes even gaslighting and manipulation. Like these things are very cruel and mean and the worst about a person. sometimes even being highly emotional, sometimes even rambling on without even having any sort of rationality to it. Self-centeredness, pridefulness, ego, non-caring, being petty. So the story of this video is that you have this space or this mind that is the space that is around me, like around the subject. Then you have two versions. You have the light side and then you have the dark side of oneself. And so it starts off with the light side beginning to open its eyes, and it starts to see this sort of reflection of itself, and it says, it starts to look at it and it's like, this is off, there's something wrong about this. And then you have this reflection that is arrogant and it begins to puff its chest up and says that it's the best version of the good side. And so the good side notices that this reflection is very negative and hostile and very terrible, and that it does not like it. And then the dark side begins to gaslight and manipulate it, and then tries to formulate this idea that they are one and the same. And then the last shot of the video is where I do a dolly shot, which is where I don't really want to explain it, but I do a dolly shot, and it is supposed to symbolize one's own understanding. It is now that he is consciously aware that he has a sinful nature. Like, this is genuinely beautifully poetic when it comes to my garments. Like, I imbued so much meaning within these pieces that everything ties in within each other. Kind of like but it's kind of like a person or a Christian that um when he reads the Bible, it also is used as a reflection to himself, to see his own, to make him consciously aware to his own flawed and sinful nature as well. If you ask me, it's a beautiful way to be able to communicate this idea, even though it's a little ghetto. But hey, I got to work with what I got with, okay? I don't have the money like that. I just got to work with what I got. And I do this all by myself. So it's like, I don't really have anyone to help me out. Well, actually, I hope that you did enjoy this ride along, actually. I hope that you found this very fun or interesting into you, that you may have learned something, or it might be something that you already kind of know. This was fun to actually make. I'm not even going to lie to you. I really enjoyed making this piece, and as well give you guys the explanation of the piece and why it fits in with society, and what does it mean and everything in like the larger context of itself. I hope you found this discussion maybe helpful, or you found the meaning of this piece and it sparks a discussion within yourself or amongst people or even in the comments. Of course, if you would like to support my body of work and you appreciate the things that I do, then buy my clothing brand stuff. I have a Shopify link on my page, and yeah, I mean the link will be actually down in the description if you check that out. And thank you for your purchase too. It really means the world to me, honestly, as an artist. Also, don't forget to hit that like, comment, subscribe button, you all. I mean, it's me, it's me, your guy, you can't forget about me. But, with all that being said, I love you, Dark Knights.
Baby, come and jump on it, up on it, let's do it, ride it, bump on it, in my saddle, baby, come and jump on it.